Hello everyone, Matt from Model Minutes here, and welcome back to the workbench for another unboxing. Today I'm taking a look at this, the Supermarine Walrus Mk.1 in 1/72 scale from Revell. So join me as I get stuck inside this box and see what it's like. So this is something that's been sat in my stash for a number of years. This is actually a kit which I have had since the first time I did modelling, probably nearly like 20 years ago, which is crazy. As a result, the outside of the box has become a little bit tatty. It has got some dirt. It wasn't stored in a particularly nice environment, like in the garage, so it has got a little bit of damage to it, but hopefully the stuff inside the box is going to be okay. But as a small caveat for this unboxing, I did kind of test fit some of the pieces and stuff in my youth, so obviously some of the things inside the kit may be my fault if things are not on the sprue, etc. But anyways, we've got this pretty cool image of a walrus in flight, and it looks to be in combat with some Japanese aircraft. Over here we've got some dimensions, a length of 15.7 and a width of 19.2 centimeters, and an item code of 04391. On the back, we have our sort of adverts for different kits in the Revell range and some skill level explanations, but basically ignore the skill levels because they don't really mean anything in the way that they were done here. It was just off of part count. On this short thin edge here, you can see that we've got a skill level of 4, but again, I would ignore that. And we do have an indication that there are 2 different paint schemes based on the 2 emblems that are included there. The other side has the same information. And then onto the long thin edge, we do have some suggested paint colors from the Revell range, and then some information about the kit as well. We have a copyright date on the bottom right of 2006, but do take that with a pinch of salt because copyright dates are not always tooling dates. Flipping over onto the other side, we have some information about the actual Supermarine Walrus and its vital role in air-sea rescue. We do also have some images from someone else who's built the kit, and you can see we've got like the engine and crew figures. Granted, these might not look amazing by today's standards, but I quite like them. I quite like when we have these things because it gives a bit of an indication of what you could do, or a bit of inspiration or motivation to do it. We do have a little bit of information about what supposedly is included, such as structural details on the surface. Well, I'd like to see some details on the surface. That would be handy. We have 3 figures, apparently. A detailed Bristol Pegasus engine, a freely rotating prop, 2 machine gun mounts, and that the undercarriage can be built extended or retracted. It does also say that we have a Royal Navy and French version, which I think was indicated by the emblems on the side. So let's get inside of the box and see what we are met with. Yep, that's everything. So what I'll do is I'll look at the instructions first. We do have a sort of safety warning sheet here. That's just a kind of generic one, so I'll put that to the side. My instructions have taken a little bit of damage, but that's from my carelessness, so that's not necessarily indicative of the kit itself. Decals are here. We'll look at the decals in a moment. As usual, we've got some information about the Walrus on the top here, in black and white, as was traditional. So this already dates the sort of age of this kit. I think I may have bought it in 2006, but it's been, sort of neglected and sat in the stash for a while. Right, so the instructions, let's put them together how they would have been, are going to feature some information about the kit, key to the different symbols, health and safety stuff, and then we turn over the page and we're met with our painting callouts. And Revell do this annoying system, or at least they did in this period, where they would have paint colors. Like here, for example, 67 is in their range, but then they would relabel it to a B. I know why they do that. They do that so they can have mixes of their own paints, and I just find it annoying. Just tell me what the mix is on the page. What I'll end up doing is I'll end up going back through and actually rewriting it all on. At the top, we've got a sprue map, which is pretty handy because it tells us where the different bits and pieces are. And then we come into our assembly stages. And it looks like the first steps we need to do are painting our crew figures and then gluing our crew figures, or, what's left of our crew figures, because this one hasn't got any legs, onto their relevant seats. Then we install those inside of the cockpit. Not much in the way of cockpit detail by the looks of it. And we join our fuselage halves together. Depending on which variant we're going to do, these parts look like they need to be painted different colors. I presume that's like the overwing sort of fuel tank thing, and that's like engine nacelle. Then we come on to our engine, and our engine has the propeller joined together, then inserted into the engine, and if we're careful, we should have a freely rotating prop. I may just not care about that and just glue it all together solid, just to make it easier for painting. Up at this point here, we have sort of like mounting the pylon for the engine nacelle, because it goes like in between the wings, I'm pretty sure. And then after we've added our engine onto that, we add our tail surfaces and we have some support struts. There are floats that we need to include, and then we come over to this point here. It is telling us that we do have the option, I think, to cut these and display them open if we would prefer. Yeah, so if you want it open, you can display it glued at the back of the plane there, like as an open, in an open position, or if you want it closed, you just leave it flat and glue it in over the top of the sort of machine gun mounts. Interesting. Then we add our engine and its sort of nacelle pylon, and then the clear parts, and then the wings get glued together. They come in a number of halves. Then we join the various wing components together, and then we start adding all of this together onto the aircraft. It does look, and here's the thing with like biplanes, they're always a little bit tricky. At least I find them to be a bit tricky, especially getting all the struts lined up correctly. Floats and the sort of tail surface get added on. It's like a rudder, but it's also like a wheel at the same time. And then we get to this point where we assemble our landing gear components. If you want it raised, you have to glue them sort of into the upper wing, or actually into the lower wing surface of the lower wing. And then we come on to this option, which is to have it lowered if you would prefer, and you can display the aircraft on the ground, like on actually the hard ground rather than, you know, being on the sea, because it's a boat plane, isn't it? It's a seaplane. And then we add our machine guns, and we have rigging instructions if you would like to rig your aircraft. It doesn't look overly complicated. It's like just between the main ones here, so maybe not too difficult to do, but no rigging is included. That then turns over the page and brings us on to our painting instructions, which are printed in black and white. So we have one here from HMS Victorious in 1945, which is the sort of typical dark sea green, dark sea grey, and like the bluey or sky bluey type colour underside. A bit annoying that it's black and white, because you could get these shades mixed up, but I think if I do a little bit of research I might be able to get it right. However, this one is a French one, and this is painted all over in silver, I want to say. F is an aluminium metallic paint. So if you want an easier option, painting it in aluminium might be a good choice. So 2 paint schemes included. That's pretty cool. Then let's look at the decals. The decals, in my case, they still seem fairly usable. There is a little bit of discoloration here, but I think if I'm careful I can remove that. It does look a little bit like, it's almost like water damage, but not quite, but that's going to be my fault from my poor storage of them. Again, copyright date of 2006, printed in Italy. There's a Z on the end of the product number here, so that means this is probably manufactured by Zinchetti, and they are generally okay. I've had decals from them before. They generally work okay. Printing is pretty nice. The colours are good. Registration is decent. The decal film may be a little bit thick, but on the whole, I would say that these decals look pretty good. I don't generally have problems with Revell decals. You do have to take a little bit of care with them, but I think they should be perfectly fine. Even the little sort of ducks up here, they look pretty good. So yeah, that's a pretty nice little set of decals there. Not sure which scheme I'd like to do. Maybe I should do the French one. And let's then move on to the plastic parts. So this is molded in the sort of grey green colour, which Revell had used for quite some time. We did, and this is where it comes to that fact that I did mess around with these. We did have effectively 3 sprues with a lot of the parts on, but I've had some of the parts off because I've been messing around with it, or I did mess around with it in my youth. So we had 1, 2, 3. I'll just very quickly look through them. You can see there is a bit of discoloration on this. I think that may just be due to age. I don't recall it being like that. We have our crew figures here. They're molded to a pretty nice quality. They're not too bad. Level of flash is actually quite manageable. There is a small amount of flash in a few places, but on the whole, not that much. Engine details are pretty nice. We have our wheels, our machine guns, the engine cowling parts, and then propellers. They look okay, don't they? It's handy on the inside of the engine nacelles. It does actually tell you which way is the top and which way to point it. Quite prominent ejector pin marks on this side, which may need a little bit of cleaning up. But on the whole, that doesn't look too bad. Then we come on to this sprue, which undoubtedly held other elements, which I've since removed. But we do have our support struts and sort of like the mounts for the engine nacelles, which are molded to a reasonably nice quality. And then on this one, we have our sort of open and closed. Actually, that one looks like it's just open straight away. Covers for our machine gun ports for our crew, and then a few other bits and pieces. I think that's part of the fuel tank. And then that brings us on to, I'll look at the clear part now. So clear part, you only get the one clear part, and you can see that's actually molded to a pretty nice quality. Maybe a few little scuffs in places, but that could be my fault. There is a bit of a mark across here. That again could be my fault, not indicative of the kit quality. But the lines, the panel lines on this are reasonably present, so I think I could mask that myself. I would be surprised actually if there was a masking set available for this. Then this brings us on to the parts. So actually, you can see I actually started assembling this. I started building this in my youth. It hasn't necessarily survived all too well. This pylon here would have been on this wing here, and that's obviously not done too well. A little bit annoyed with myself that I did start this one, because I think with my current skills I could probably do better, but I think I can probably adjust and overcome. So wing surfaces then, they're molded to a moderate quality. Perhaps the sort of stressed skin isn't as pronounced as we've seen on other kits, but it's okay, isn't it? It's all right. It's just give an impression. The control surfaces have recessed panel lines as well, just to highlight them. The floats, they look okay, don't they? Reasonable representation. I do need to do a little bit of work just cleaning that up. And then we have our upper wing surfaces as well, molded to a nice quality. Not much in the way of flash. A little bit of the sprue gates need to be removed though. And tail surface there. Am I missing a tail surface? Oh, please tell me I'm not missing a tail surface. That's going to be very unfortunate if I am. No, I'm not missing it. It just fell out over the other side. So I've got two tail surfaces. So the kit does appear to be complete. Because given the age of the kit, I'm not sure if I'd be able to even get a replacement. I'd have to design one, I think, and then sort of copy it and create a new one. Yeah, so this brings us on to the fuselage halves, which are molded to a nice enough quality. And the benefit, of course, with me having removed them, is that I can dry fit them together. There we go. They fit okay. Fits generally quite nice, isn't it? There is a little bit of the sprue gates that need to be removed, a little bit of flash there as well, but on the whole, that doesn't look too bad. I think that if we look on the box here, it looks like this was a window down here, but in the kit, it's just molded on, so I'll probably just sort of paint that black or something. Yeah, so part of the reason why I had this all out was because I was actually testing to see if it floated, and I put all like the wings together and whatever. And if I remember correctly, if you do have it assembled, it does actually float on water. I think I was just messing around with it, just playing about. Let's just check on the inside and see if... Okay, so there was some copyright stuff on here at once upon a time, but that's been removed since, which is a bit annoying. But I don't think it matters because I can talk about that because we know the history of this kit. So yeah, there was quite a few plastic parts in here. Perhaps the detail isn't amazing, but I think for what the kit was, it doesn't look too bad. Yes, it suffered a bit in my hands, past me wasn't so careful with it, but actually everything appears to be here, and I think that I'll be able to build this regardless of the problems. Decals look pretty nice. We have two paint schemes. The instructions could be a little bit better. I don't like black and white painting instructions. I just find them to be a little bit more difficult to use, and you can have problems with them by, you know, mixing up which shade of grey is which. All of that did come contained within this box though, and that's part of the reason why I bought it, because I was really interested in the kit, and there weren't that much in the way of walruses, I don't think, at the time when I was, you know, first getting into modelling. So talking about the price then, I can't remember how much I paid for this, and actually this does appear to be discontinued. So if you did want one of these, you would be looking on the second-hand market for it. I think given what I've seen in here, like maybe at a push, £10 would be kind of the maximum that you'd want to spend on it. Anything over that, I would be saying, you know, is it something you desperately want? Does it justify a higher price than that? So whilst this had a 2006 copyright date on it, I believe that's when it was first released by Revell, and Revell actually took this kit from Matchbox when they bought Matchbox out. So this is originally a 1973 tooling, which I think does make a bit more sense now given what we've seen inside the box in relation to the level of detail and the quality of the plastic parts. Matchbox didn't make particularly bad kits, and I think that this one should build up quite nicely. I think maybe it would be nice if Revell would re-release this at some point, because it's been 20 years basically since this one was last seen, and maybe it is overdue for a re-release, but perhaps if they can come up with a sort of vintage range so that we know we're getting old toolings inside of the box, that would be a good thing. So I think I might be tempted to do the French version, because I think that one might be a little bit easier to paint, but I haven't quite decided yet what I'm going to do. But do let me know what you think of my review and whether my assessment of this kit was fair in the comments. Don't forget we do have a Model Minutes Model Club. And if you'd like to join the club and get exclusive perks such as early access to videos and other things, check out the links in the description. Massive thanks to these guys on screen, whose extra support allows me to create consistent content. Of course, there are other ways to help support the channel if you'd like to do so, and again, full information is below the video. The best way to support the channel for free though is by subscribing with notifications turned on. This means you'll never miss a modelling upload. Finally though, last thing to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll catch you on the workbench again next time.